Welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're just, our keynote is joining, just wrapping up another event. So happy to have you all here today. This is sort of a wrap up to International Women's Day. We've made it Women's Week. We feel like we need more than just a day to shout out all the amazing things that are happening here. So a huge welcome to Jen Harper, who's on her way, Seema Sanghavi, Noora Sharrab for joining us and being our panelists today. We're really excited to talk about closing the gender gap and how this is going to lead to future sustainability. Really a big thank you to Franco Pompanio for being here as well, and our partner, the Small Business Services from Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, who've been a great partner in helping make this event happen today. So really excited. One of the big things I wanted to share with everyone, I don't know if everyone was aware, but we had a big announcement last week where we launched Idea Mississauga. It's the Mississauga Innovation District, and it's a new branding for all the amazing things that are already happening in Mississauga. We're starting to shout out from the rooftops and get more attention for our entrepreneurs and all of our innovative partners in Mississauga. And we're so excited to share this branding with us. So I'd thrown in the chat earlier, sign up for Idea Mississauga on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Mona, if you could put in a link to the newsletter for upcoming events and programming. We're trying to work collaboratively with our partners. Between UTM, we have iCube doing amazing things with the students and the community. We also have Edge at Sheridan working on a sustainable, focused front for entrepreneurs in the region as well. We have Altitude Accelerator supporting more on the scale up and tech side. And we're trying to create an opportunity that if you come to Mississauga, if you come to Idea Mississauga, it's a one door will find you the right platform. So come in, check out our website, our concierge tool. We're developing it, trying to make sure all the programs are there so you can click in, say who you are, what you're looking for, and the right program will show for you. We also have the Innovation Asset Map, which we are also developing, which is highlighting all of the different assets in Mississauga, whether it's the National Research Council you're looking for, an accelerator, a place to find housing for your new business through VentureX or other opportunities, or Mindshare Learning. There's all these great opportunities, and we're trying to pull it all into one portal through Idea Mississauga. So please do check it out and follow us and join our newsletter community. So today, our objective of the conference for 2022 is to share information, experiences, and the insights of these amazing women we have here today. Our topic we've pulled from the United Nations theme for International Women's Day, and it's how are we addressing the gender gap? How are we moving toward equality to create a sustainable future? That's a big focus for us today, and that's what we'll be addressing in a panel at the end of the conversation. And that's the fun part, where we get to really talk about it and hear the different experiences and our approaches to addressing this. So I think right now what we will do is hand it over to Mayor Crombie, who has recorded a message for us and is going to share some words of welcome.
Thank you, Donna. Good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Week. I would like to thank Mississauga's Economic Development Office for hosting this event that celebrates women in business and for creating a platform to share some of their amazing achievements. I would also like to thank our panel of entrepreneurs that have taken time out of their schedules to share their business journey and experiences. Women-owned small and medium enterprises continue to be underrepresented. In fact, only 16% of Canadian small and medium-sized businesses are women-owned. That's why I'm very happy that we're all coming together today to promote women-owned businesses by talking about their strengths and journeys and some of the ways we can continue to foster gender equality in leadership and empower women in business. I hope you all learn from each other's experiences on how you overcame barriers and found opportunities that led to success. I believe women-led businesses are a key driver of Mississauga's economic future. And to get us there, we need women to be part of these important discussions and influence decisions that will help narrow the gap of gender parity in business. I encourage all of you to connect with our economic development team to learn about the programs, resources, and services that are offered to help support you in your entrepreneurial journey. Whether you are an established business, launching, or even just thinking about starting your own business, take advantage of our support systems and make new connections and continue to build a community of networks. Please enjoy today's conference, and I hope you all come away inspired and driven to make your place in business. Let's make this morning one to remember and push for transformative change for women in entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to Mayor Crombie. She's such a huge supporter of entrepreneurs, having been an entrepreneur herself at part of her journey. Just a huge support of innovation and everything that's moving forward. One of the pieces that was announced last week is that we will be having a co-working space in Square One called Idea Mississauga. It will be just over 4,000 square feet and an opportunity. It will house our Mississauga Business Entrepreneur Center, featuring the startup company, Starter Company Plus, summer company programs, core programming. There are lots of supports for entrepreneurs, whether you're starting or growing a business. So we're excited, and you'll hear more about that as we move through the process. But we are looking at a late fall opening. So fingers crossed that all moves forward in terms of construction, but we're really excited to see that move forward. Now, we don't have Jen here yet, so we'll switch our agenda a little bit. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with our panelists. I think, Noora, do you mind starting and sharing a little bit about your business, who you are, and what your company stands for?
Absolutely. First of all, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's just a pleasure. Oh, Jen's joining us right now. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So my name is Noora Sharrab. I'm one of the co-founders of Sitti Social Enterprise. We are a social enterprise that provides self-reliance and employment opportunities to refugee women, particularly in the Middle East, to produce handmade products, which started out with a simple bar of olive oil soap. And today we're featured in over 200 retail shops across Canada, including Whole Foods Market right here in Mississauga. So yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
That's great. Thanks, Noora. Seema?
Hi, everyone. My name is Seema, and I'm the founder of Cooks Who Feed. So we ethically produce kitchen textiles with a give back model. Our goal is to be the kitchen textile brand for the conscious cook. We started in 2019, just at the end of 2019, and we launched with a few handmade, handcrafted aprons. For every apron sold, 100 meals are provided to the hungry. All our production happens in India, where we hire marginalized women. We currently have a team of 68 women that we employ full time. And we've grown since 2019. We now have over 12 adult aprons in our line. We have a line of child aprons. And in the coming weeks, we'll be introducing tea towels and linen napkins as well.
That's great. Thank you so much to both of our panelists. I will now hand it over to Franca Pomponio from the Small Business Services Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario to introduce herself and also introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Happy International Women's Week. I'm delighted to be here today on behalf of the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, where our mandate is to strengthen economic capacity for innovation, entrepreneurship, and collaboration, and promote the development of a strong and diversified Southern Ontario economy. I work in the Small Business Services section of the agency, where our goal is to help Ontario entrepreneurs access government business information. We provide free information and resources on starting and running a business in Ontario. We are meeting again virtually today. There are challenging times still that we're experiencing with the ongoing pandemic. Hopefully we're looking at better days ahead, and things are going better now. But I wanted to just recognize what small businesses have been through and how they continue to show remarkable resilience. I'm honored today to be here to recognize International Women's Week and Day and Month, but also to the contribution that business owners like you continue to show perseverance, hard work, determination, and ambition. Small businesses have also shown incredible agility and the ability to embrace change and adapt over the past couple of years. Throughout the last couple of years, SMEs have also, however, shown how critical they are to our health and safety, our security, but also our daily activities and daily cultural and entertainment pastimes that add so much richness to our lives. We all know that small and medium-sized businesses are key to Canada's economy and prosperity. So from the outset of the pandemic, FedDev Ontario, which we are called for short, we moved quickly to deliver relief funding to help support businesses and organizations to keep staff employed and prepare for a more stable future. We continue to offer assistance through the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, the Tourism Relief Fund, the Aerospace Regional Recovery Initiative, and the Jobs and Growth Fund, or the JGF. The JGF is an initiative introduced to help businesses future-proof their operations, build resiliency, and prepare for growth in every corner of the country. It's delivered by Canada's regional development agencies, and it includes $700 million nationally over the next 3 years, which includes up to $70 million dedicated to businesses created after January 2020 that meet the eligibility criteria. FedDev Ontario is investing $224 million to help Southern Ontario businesses create jobs, build resiliency, and prepare for growth by transitioning to a green economy. We are now accepting applications from eligible businesses and not-for-profit organizations across Southern Ontario. So I want to encourage everyone to call us. We have a contact center that has knowledgeable information contact center agents that will speak to you about your business. I'll put this information in the chat, but we are at 1-888-576-4444, or you can visit us at feddevontario.gc.ca. So I wanted to take this opportunity as well to thank the Small Business Enterprise Center for their valued partnership, their efforts in organizing today's event, and their continued hard work and service to SMEs all year round, and particularly throughout the last couple of years. I will end by wishing you all continued professional and personal success, and I look forward to a great event. And now it is my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker for the event, Jennifer Harper, founder and CEO of Cheekbone Beauty, a Canadian Indigenous-owned beauty brand known for creating clean, vegan, and sustainable color cosmetics. Welcome, Jennifer Harper.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here this morning with all of these incredible women and anyone else who's in the audience that we can't see. I have a slide to share, a presentation, and I'm just going to use the share option. I just wanted to make sure that was okay. There we go. Can everyone see that? No?
Not yet, Jen.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
I wasn't going to do this, but I think it's just, oh, there we go.
Perfect. Yeah, starting
Now?
to see it. There it is. Yep.
Excellent.
Great.
So, as mentioned, my name is Jen Harper, and I'm the founder of this company called Cheekbone Beauty Cosmetics, Inc. This was born out of so much pain and joy and just a passion for what could be possible. So the mission and vision of our brand, Cheekbone Beauty, is helping every Indigenous kid on the planet see and feel their value in the world while we are crafting sustainable color cosmetics. Now, why is that so important? Well, I'm going to share a few stories with everyone as to why we think it's important, and hopefully you will join us on our journey. So I have a personal story, and I know that everyone does. And I feel like the more vulnerable that I became in sharing my personal story with our Cheekbone Beauty community, the more people seem to be drawn to the brand and have a deeper understanding of why we feel at Cheekbone Beauty that representation saves lives. This is a picture of my grandmother. Her name is Emily Paul, and this is a picture taken when she was just 16 years old. This was the last year that she spent in one of Canada's residential schools. Now, my grandmother was taken from her family at the age of 6 and forced to really live in this school until she was 16. We now know that her making out of the school system alive is a truly remarkable situation in itself. Because as we're learning, many First Nations children did not make it out of that school system alive. When I started learning that this was the history of my family, it was truly a realization of my own personal struggles that I was facing. And when I discovered the term generational or transgenerational trauma, and how it really was impacting my life to this day, made such a huge difference. And that happens when one group of people or a person is put in a situation or in an event that they are not equipped to deal with. So both of my grandparents, residential school survivors, went on to have 8 children, my father being one of the oldest. And then what happened was that trauma was then ultimately passed on to me and my siblings. So when I realized that my personal struggles were related to the residential school system, it was that time that I became aware and had the ability to actually help change the narrative, not only for me, but for many First Nations people. And that was the beginning of a long journey into where Cheekbone Beauty is today. So back in January of 2015, I had the most incredible, life-changing dream. But at the same time, remember, I'm learning about my family's history and experience in Canada and my grandmother's story. And so I have this dream. It's in the middle of the night. I pop out of bed and I literally said, like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So what I remember the most from the dream was all of these Native little girls, and they were covered in lip gloss. And what I remember the most from that was their joy at the time and how happy they were and their laughter. So I grabbed my laptop that evening and I started writing out what is the foundation or the beginnings of our business plan to this day. And I needed to create a product. And for me, it was the lip gloss. And then I wanted to use a portion of that a portion of the profits from that product and start a foundation or scholarship fund, something in my grandmother's name as a way to honor her and her experience. Fast forward, the next 2 years were spent on product development, like market research. How was I going to make this happen? And gratefully, we did launch as an online cosmetics brand in the end of 2016. It was November. However, just before launching Cheekbone Beauty, I did deal with such a tragic, painful experience and loss. My brother, BJ, took his own life. And at that point, I really could not see myself moving forward with this brand. However, he said something to me that was so powerful and still runs through my head every single day. As many entrepreneurs know, this idea of starting a business and a company is so challenging and can be so hard. But he said to me, Jen, our youth need hope and they need help. And what you're doing with this brand, this business, is going to be great. And at that point, it didn't even have a name, but he believed in the idea of creating a business that had Indigenous faces representing it, as well as gave back to our communities. And so on those truly challenging days, I think of those words, and I know that the last few years of hard work will pay off, because we believe in this brand as much as my brother did. So what a journey it has been. Part of our story and success is truly related to an experience we got to have. Cheekbone Beauty in September of 2019 went on Canada's hit show CBC Dragon's Den. We were in season 14 and it was episode 1, which can now be seen, I believe, on Netflix, still there. But what an incredible experience. I am a born introvert, definitely not that outgoing person that you would definitely find speaking in front of audiences back then or going on a show like Dragon's Den. I was so nervous and prepared really, really well. However, they tape the show like it's a live event, and you walk in and, you know, with shaking, sweaty palms, I stood in front of these 6 Canadian business icons and pitched Cheekbone Beauty. Definitely an exercise in working that courage muscle, and I truly believe that experience helped me grow as an entrepreneur and was an incredible marketing opportunity for any other business owners in the audience that are thinking of doing that. And we have seen growth ever since that day, and was just an amazing experience. One, I had the chance to ask these Canadian business icons any questions, and getting their feedback was really, really helpful. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we don't necessarily want to hear negative feedback, but it certainly helps us see where there's room for our business to grow or products to change, and any challenges that would be facing the consumer. So I encourage all of you to go flex that courage muscle and try it. And back then, we were doing things a lot differently than we do today. We have transformed this entire business. So I had spent the first half of my career in the food industry, and I was working for broadline food distribution companies. And what I learned during that time of my career was we would sell French fries, for instance. I always use this example, but they were coming in one of our company's branded boxes. However, there was another company, very popular French fry company, McCain is actually the one that was making the French fries. We would just get them sent to us in our company's branded box. And what I learned at that time was that this is what is called white label, private label. So there's a lot of manufacturers out there in the food industry that will make people's products and then slap a logo on it and call it a day. When I woke up that night and grabbed my laptop, the first thing I started to search was, how and where am I going to get this lipstick made? Because I didn't know, or lip gloss, I didn't know anything about how to make a lip gloss. As much as you can find those on YouTube, I knew from the industry that my husband's in, I didn't want to be making lip gloss in my kitchen for compliance and regulatory reasons. So I found what is called a white label and private label in the beauty industry. And so that happened to be just as common as it was in the food industry. I did know early on, though, I really felt in the deepest part of my gut that this is not the product that I truly want to bring to the world. But I had no money, no capital, and it was a start. It was a way for me to show something and really just dip my foot in and see if the world wanted a brand like Cheekbone Beauty to exist. So we really used, our partners that were in private white label in the beginning as a way to test the market, which sometimes is, a lot of times people ask me the question, if you went back, would you do things the way you did? I don't know the answer, because I believe I learned a lot, and I believe that I did it. I would never want to take anyone's investment money unless I believed in what we were doing, and I didn't believe in all of those products at all. They were good products, but they weren't what I knew my brand and what Cheekbone Beauty wanted to put out into the world. But it was definitely a start. So we all have to start somewhere. But where are we today as a business? Where is Cheekbone Beauty today? Well, we are definitely brighter, bolder, cleaner, and greener. We are a conscious beauty brand that is so founded and based in our Indigenous roots. And I'm so proud of all of the transformations we have made. Every single product is so thoughtfully, carefully designed and crafted. We use a concept called life cycle thinking. Or life cycle analysis when we are creating and making anything here at Cheekbone Beauty. Our vision is to be clean, vegan, and sustainable, and we are there. However, all of those things are a journey, specifically sustainability. There is no silver bullet or black and white answer. It's a very nuanced conversation. And of course, we're living in a time in history where every brand wants to call themselves that. And I think it's really important for sure to every brand and organization to start their journey into sustainability, but being very honest and transparent about the steps that you're making with your community. I think people appreciate honesty and understanding why we make different packaging choices for different products, and how that there's no end point to this. I think we'll all always be on this sustainability journey. So life cycle analysis or thinking is when from the harvesting of a raw ingredient, how that happens, what human is impacted by that. So are things done ethically to the end of the life of a product, which means, is this going to end up in a landfill? At Cheekbone Beauty, our goal is to not have anything end up in a landfill. And in the beginning, when I started this journey, we actually used the word zero waste. However, internally, we still think that way, but outwardly, we don't push that conversation or terminology into the world because it's absolutely impossible. It's an impossible feat. But as a business and a company, and a brand, we think of it is how close can we get to that? And we go back to our Indigenous roots. My ancestors, my Anishinaabe culture, have been the OGs of sustainability. They have been the land and keepers of land for thousands and thousands of years. And they are the ones still protecting it. My family is actually Bear Clan, which means they are protectors of the land. And how is that? And why is that? Why is it that Indigenous people make up only 5% of the global population, which is 370 million people, but are protecting 80% of the world's biodiversity? And the deeper I looked into this, it was so clear. It is because of this innate relationship that Indigenous people have with all things that are living. And a story I love to share is that, when my dad still lives on our family's reservation, and a conversation I had with him last spring, he said to me, our cousins are here. And I'm like, oh, which cousins? What are you talking about? And it was bears. They were coming out of hibernation. And he was not laughing or chuckling like I was. That is how close Indigenous people feel to all living things. And it's why you see them as the ones on front lines protecting many of the things that come from our natural resources. They don't look to resources as commodities or things that can be bought and sold, but as gifts from the creator. And at Cheekbone Beauty, we do our very best to show how much we honor those things and want to be part of protecting those things with the honest understanding that we are a consumer-based goods business, and we're doing the best we can with what we have and what we know at this time in history. So this is one of my favorite pictures. We had an incredible thing happen to Cheekbone Beauty in 2021. We got to partner with the largest global retailer in the beauty industry. You can now find Cheekbone Beauty in Sephora.ca and 9 Sephora flagship stores in Canada. And you will find us in more Sephora stores in North America in the next coming year for sure. This picture, it was a picture that we used to go live that day on September 21st, 2021, when that happened. And it really just speaks to everything about our brand. We are an amazing color cosmetics company that has done an incredible job at sourcing all of the right raw ingredients that are truly biodegradable and bring and share that bolder side of nature to our community. I also love sharing this photo because not only are we so many things as a brand, but we are a brand that gets to dismantle the narrative of what it means or what an Indigenous person looks like. And we are a brand for every human being. Indigenous people come in the fairest of fair skins to the deepest, darkest melanin. And we hope that that old Hollywood version of what it means to be an Indigenous person, a Native person, is changed by the imagery that our brand is sharing with the world. And another incredible thing happened for us in 2021. We won an award from Bell Media. It was $1 million in ad spend. Absolutely never in our budget would Cheekbone Beauty, or any small brand for that matter, ever have that kind of money to spend on ads during Q4. So November, December, and January of the year, we got to put out ads across the country on national television and billboards, including some on the Gardner Expressway, which was such an epic feeling for me to see. I literally screamed when I saw our first billboard go up. And the campaign was called Write the Story. And it is a powerful message, again, about us helping change narratives, you know, so much, and for far too long, every story in the news that you would see about Indigenous people has been a negative one. And we turned Write the Story into a positive smear campaign, and really focused on highlighting the power of Indigenous representation and how much it matters. And it matters so much because, you know, before losing my brother, he would regularly send me DMs or text messages about Indigenous people, Native people, just doing anything cool, whether it was an athlete, an actress, anyone. And I realized not until he was gone how powerful that was. Because when you see people that look like you, then you can see yourself doing something in as whether it be starting a business or becoming an athlete or doing anything within your community. But it only happens when you start to see yourself, and that's why Indigenous representation truly, truly matters. And we believe at Cheekbone Beauty that it saves lives and will save lives. And just this past January, I cannot believe this, but we made a list in Canadian Business Magazine of the new innovators in this country in the #4 spot, with a company called, I'm sure everyone's heard of it, called Shopify, taking the #1 spot. And it's because of the incredible innovation work that we do. Innovation is at the heart of everything Cheekbone Beauty is doing. We are working on some incredible projects at the moment. We are based and headquartered on this gorgeous land in the Niagara region, the original homelands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. And it is fruit-bearing country. And we are actually working on a project right now where we are taking waste from our agricultural industry and turning some of those things into ingredients or future ingredients for projects that we're working on in the future. So how does a girl who has no experience in the beauty industry and really, come from a life that was rooted in trauma, turn everything around? It is absolutely the love of community, family, and people like all of you that believed in our brand and still believe in us this day to support us. We as consumers have the power. Who are we supporting at every single checkout? I think it's time that we all paid a lot more attention to that. My brother, BJ, was an extremely funny guy. And when he said to me that, Jen, our kids need hope and help, that Cheekbone Beauty, he knew this business was going to be great. And it will be, as long as we have the support of all of you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Jen. Such an inspiring story. You had me laughing, crying, and shouting out for your success moving forward. We're just so happy to have you here today and hear that story. So I am going to move over, and I've been following the comments. It's just so wonderful. And the colors. I know someone shouted out your colors. That's one of my favorite things. I took a whole bunch of, I'll be posting on Instagram on all of this.
I'm gonna,
If you want to
yeah,
stop
there we
sharing,
go. There.
great.
Perfect. Sorry, I was
Excellent.
like, I need to figure out how to
Thank
stop
you.
sharing.
If you want to keep it up the whole time, that's okay too. This is wonderful. So now we're going to move into our panel discussion. As I mentioned earlier, gender gap is a real focus for us, leading towards sustainability. We're sort of leaning on that United Nations template for this discussion today. So just a couple things. I was doing a little research. In 2020, women in Ontario were making 89 cents for every dollar that a man was making. So it's better than it was in 1998, where it was 81 cents to the dollar. But we understand the gender wage gap is larger for racialized women, for newcomers, for women with disabilities, Indigenous and trans women. It's an even greater gap than what that's showing. And I think after the pandemic, we know how much that impacted women in particular, having to step down from jobs to be home for children, to be home for as caregivers to elderly parents and family members. There was a much greater impact on women broadly. So I think today I'd love to talk a little bit about what your organizations are doing to address the gender gap. You know, we're all women leaders, women founders, so it's exciting to have you around the table for this discussion. So I think I'll start by Jen, if you want to talk about how your company, if that's an impact for you, are you looking at bringing in specifically women, or how are you addressing the gender gap from your perspective at Cheekbone Beauty?
Yeah, so to be like 100% honest, it's funny when you start these things, these are things I wasn't looking at or paying attention to. I certainly pay attention to now and try to make decisions based on this. But as a woman-founded business, I think I was just so focused on getting things done and building the company that early on, those were things that we certainly didn't look at. But now that we're like an actual business and have a board, like these are things that I certainly pay attention to. And I'm really, really proud that I'm pretty sure we're like 95% women at Cheekbone Beauty. We only have the one lone fellow that works here. But it's definitely something that as we grow and build, it's in every corner of the company. These are things that you want to focus on and support and make it so that I think the main thing for me as a leader is just really creating a safe place for no matter who you are or where you come from, that you feel safe coming to work, you feel safe voicing who you really are, and that's been the main focus for me at this point.
That's great. And this one, I won't throw all of these to every one of you, these questions. I want to have a bit more of a natural discussion, but I think on the first few questions, I'd really love each of you to address it. So Seema, do you want to handle that one?
For sure. So all our production team is women. So we only hire marginalized women to produce our products, and that was intentional from day one. And to be honest, it was the ladies. I met a group of wonderful women who are learning to be seamstresses, and that's where I got the idea for Cooks Who Feed. That's what gave me the inspiration to start this. I wanted to help more marginalized women, and my background being Indian and seeing how in India, I think we're a bit back, right? We're a bit behind where we are now when it comes to women's rights and women representation, especially. And I really want to help change that. Most of the women that we've hired, this is their first real fair trade work. This is they didn't even know this existed as a possibility for them. And I want to change that. That needs to be changed. And back to what Jen was saying, it's representation, right? If you don't see something, you don't know it's a possibility. And for so many of the women that we work with, they didn't know this was a possibility. And I want to make sure that their children, their daughters, know it's very much a possibility and within their reach. So we will continue to only hire women and try to support them and become independent.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love hearing that it's about showcasing and having that visibility. And I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is make sure our mentors reflect the Mississauga community, bring in speakers and support so that people can see themselves as entrepreneurs and, as innovators, and just exciting to share all of this. So Noora.
Yeah, in our late last impact report that we launched in 2020, 100% of our both leadership and artisanal team in Jordan were women. And in the beginning of COVID, 100% of them were the sole breadwinners of their families. And so that really goes a lot, because a lot of the artisans that we work with through Sitti and through our CBO partnerships, we realize that it's about creating self-reliance, and women have a way to, particularly in the community that we work with, marginalized refugee population in the Shagash refugee camp in Jordan. A lot of them, they are working really to support multiple generation households. And I recall, like, one of the women that started with us, who was a grandmother, and Sitti means my grandmother in Arabic, so it just aligned really beautifully. But it was, she was a woman that was just determined to move away from the charity model and really create self-sustainability and financial independence for her family by, working with us. And it was just so beautiful to see that she was setting a role to the rest of her family, but also understanding that in a lot of communities, it's not always the men that bring in the buck at the end of the day. There were particularly with some of the women that we work with, their husbands experience chronic illnesses that prevent them from being able to enter into the workforce, and so it's up to the women in the family to step up and to be able to support. And so there are so many different scenarios to keep it into account. And for us, we really like to look at it from, like, how are we creating self-reliance as a company through the household, not to just one individual, but we know that that one individual is not independent to, herself, but it's that she's really tied to a larger community that she is holding up.
I think that ties in well to the sustainability question, because I think the approach all of you are taking, it's natural that there are women in this environment, that's who you're supporting. And if we're looking forward to companies that are moving into spaces beyond maybe traditionally women-focused companies, especially, how are we addressing that and sort of addressing this gender gap, leading to sustainability? And so I found a definition of sustainability. I won't try and say that word too many times. Meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And understanding the three pillars are economy, society, and environment, or profit, people, and planet. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, I'd love each of you to define what sustainability maybe means for your corporation or organization, and how you hope to keep that as a future goal. And I'll go different. Seema, go first this time.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand the question correctly. So how we're being sustainable when it comes to women's rights and empowering women?
Yeah, focusing specifically on that gender gap, bringing it back to that.
For sure. So again, I think it really comes down to representation, right? What you see is what you know. And I think as long as we keep striving to show women in different roles, and then we can do any role that a man can do, I think that's what's going to make it sustainable, right? And it has to be in every sector, it has to be in every industry, it has to be, at every level. When I look at, our production team and specifically, it's so important, and it's so amazing to see, their daughters seeing their mothers work and being, the breadwinners for their family. It's so important to see that, they can be educated. They don't need to rely on anyone else to provide for them. I think that it's really just about making sure that it's consistently visible. We don't question when we see men in roles. We're like, yeah, okay, of course they're going to be in these roles. But we question, when we see women in certain roles, there's a lot of questions like, oh, should the woman be in that role? But why do we think that way? I think it's changing that mindset and making sure that, when we look at a man, whether he's in a predominantly, woman, what we classify as a woman type of role, we don't really question it. So why do we question it when it's the other way around? And I think that's the key, is really changing that mindset for both men and women.
That's a great comment. I'm like 5 years behind when I'm reading Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, which I know has different approaches, but it's a lot of that where we as women question ourselves. Why are other women
No,
here, right? So why aren't we supporting
sure.
each other and building up that community more and more?
For sure. I think even before, like when I go see like a potential client or anything, it's funny because I tell myself, Seema, be Bob. Be Bob. Stop like acting, like act like a white man. Go in there and act like you know your shit, and you got the confidence. Be Bob. And it's funny because that's what I tell myself. I don't tell myself go in there and be Seema. I say be Bob. And that helps me kind of visualize, okay, this is how I need to be when I step into that room. And you know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I have to tell myself that. So you can imagine for women who've never seen other women in roles of power, what do they tell themselves, right?
We need a new hashtag, and we need t-shirts that are hashtag #BeBob. I like that approach. Okay. Noora, how are you? How is your company focusing on the sustainable support for the gender gap and closing it?
So when I started Sitti, I started it 6 months pregnant with a 10-month-old, or actually it was, no, my son was a year and a half, sorry, at the time. Um, and for me, I wanted to ensure that mothers wouldn't have a barrier to entry to enter and be able to work. And so when we looked at building our first ever soap workshop out of the refugee camp, we wanted to ensure, obviously flexible hours. So if they had to pick up their children, during off hours, they were able to do that, that we would not restrict them to this like 9 to 5 mentality, that that's all you can do and that's the only time that you can work. We wanted to allow for flexibility around there. But we also built like a mini daycare in the center at the same time. So we had like an extra room available. And so we knew that there were mothers that didn't have accessibility to where are they going to put their children if they, if they wanted to, particularly in marginalized communities, there isn't kind of available resources that may be available in like big cities. And so we wanted to ensure that if they were coming into the center to access programming or workshops or trainings or whatever it was, and then accessing obviously employment through Sitti, that if they did have children, that wasn't going to be a question of where am I going to put my child. And so I think coming into it as an entrepreneur and as a mother, I was thinking of, okay, how are these women going to navigate through these multiple roles that they're holding, and then also ensuring that when you think of it from this mindset, I think of sustainability as like long-term, not providing these temporary band-aid solutions, but really looking, especially when we think of self-reliance. I always say this, we're very conservative to scale our team because I want to make sure before I add on 100 more women into our team to start producing, where I might be able to have droplets of an impact in them. I want to make sure that the current artisans that we work with are fully sustainable, they're fully supported in that capacity before I'm able to then expand out. And that's why for us it's quality over quantity from that perspective, because sustainability really means looking at it from all angles. I would argue that even from a pay equity perspective, it's not just a dollar for dollar perspective. It's really like, are we giving them the same flexibility from other means? And again, I've been in positions where I've worked executive jobs where I was in the hospital giving birth and answering an email because I didn't want to seem that I, was not serious enough about my work, or that, that I, and then I realized later that what was I doing? Like, I didn't have to do that. I didn't like, I felt I didn't feel safe enough that I could let go and then still come back and have my position protected. And I felt like I had to keep pushing so aggressively to a point where I overburnt myself and, ended up having like an anxiety attack as a result of it, because I was trying to do way too much. And because I felt like if I didn't maintain the same level as like my male counterpart, then maybe I'm not going to be seen as serious enough. And I've realized now that no, that's not a thing. And so when I look at it for my company, like now as a social enterprise, we try to incorporate that within our modeling, looking at sustainable well-being at a core of this, particularly at a time during the pandemic where you know, we have to consider these things as well. So
I can picture you in the hospital on your phone. And it's like a sitcom, right? But it's what women do, and there's a whole stress around achieving and being above and beyond to be at the same level as men in a lot of cases, as Bob, poor Bob. But knowing that we need to do that, right? So I'd like to hand it over now to Jen. How are you approaching this?
All right, trying to unmute. Yeah, I think it's so unfortunate that we feel that way that would have to happen. And I'm just thinking of a recent conversation that I had with the founder of Next, Joanna, when she publicly shared that while she was pregnant, she's going after investment, and investors are asking, well, what's this going to do, right? Whereas we know that would never happen to our counterparts in any of those kinds of situations if their partners were expecting a child. So it's super frustrating. So at Cheekbone Beauty, when I originally thought of sustainability for this is like just, you know, the beginning of it all was, in losing my brother the way I've lost my brother, was how, and at the same time in that, you know, year, hearing that two 10-year-olds and a 12-year-old in one First Nation took their lives, and then another reservation where kids that age are taking their lives. So to us, sustainability means, like, how are we going to help kids feel like they deserve and have the right to be alive, never mind what other resources and access they should have as basic, like, standards of living. But it was just like this whole gut-wrenching plan of, like, let's just empower these kids to see themselves. And I don't think I know any other Indigenous woman in business, right? I do now, because of the spaces I get to be in, but on a public grand scale, I don't want to be, I don't love attention or wanted my face to be all over all of these things, but it physically has to, because Indigenous kids need to see my face. That's the only reason I am here speaking today, is because I'm trying to make that happen, and not because Jen Harper wants people to know my name. I could care less. I really don't. I've tried to stay in the background in the early days of doing this as much as possible. But then that switch happened where I realized, you know, sustainability for us is trying to get kids to see themselves and to see that they deserve to live, and there's so much opportunity for them in a place like entrepreneurship. And so that is the sort of the foundation and the ground that we looked at this from. Now here, within in so many years, realizing there's so much work to do to continue for us to truly build a sustainable business. It starts with paying people properly, right? And that is something that we have focused on from the beginning, that a living wage there was no question that that's what people would be paid when they come to work at Cheekbone Beauty, and making sure that they have access to resources, and, you know, if you're not feeling safe, that you have someone to talk to about those things. And so as we grow and build, these are all so many things that we're going to continue to incorporate. But we're just still this tiny little startup, and excited about the future for sure.
Well, we are thrilled that you, Jen Harper, are willing to be in front of all of us, because I think we're all learning so much about this community, and through COVID and the awareness of the graves and all these different pieces that our community was oblivious to, I think, on so many levels, even though it was there and present in everything we were going through. It's just opportunities to see an entrepreneur like yourself leading and highlighting what we can do, and having it's such an emotional and touchy area for everyone. And I just love that you're willing to be open and talk about it, because bringing these conversations up to the surface are so important for everyone. So thank you again for being here. One of the comments we've touched on a little bit is how are we including women leaders? It's the moms and caregivers. I know we've touched on this in terms of daycare and supports that are happening. How are we ensuring that whether they're working from home or have all these supports and extra pulls in their life outside of the work area, how are they not punished or passed over for opportunities? And I'm wondering, I'll throw this out to everyone. I don't want anyone to feel like their voice isn't included, but if you're feeling like it's been said already, you don't need to duplicate it. So I'll open that one to whoever feels they have a comment.
I don't think we're doing a good job, to be honest, like overall, at creating this, making sure it's equitable. I guess that's the word, right? Even if I look at my own personal experience, like I went back to work early. I cut my maternity leave in half, after I had my third child because it was, there was a position and I knew, okay, if I don't take it, someone else will take it. And that was told very clearly to me as well. Okay, you come back early or it's gone, right? And that, that happens everywhere. Like I'm not unique in any way. That happens to every woman and every woman. And I think that also we're not fully aware of the impact itself. And like I can share an example with you. When I first started learning about COVID, and how started getting emails from clients saying, oh, like especially because I work a lot with clients in hospitality, saying, okay, we have to close our doors. Who knows how long? So we're going to put a hold on this. So I could see like, okay, we're just starting to make momentum in the business and it started to go backwards. And I was starting to feel anxious. But it was when I got the email from the school district saying kids are now going to be at home that I started to cry. And like, I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to take care of kids and work? And when I looked over at my husband, I'm like, we just got an email, the kids are home. And I realized it didn't impact him as much as it impacted me. And I'd like to believe that we have a fair marriage, but obviously at some level we don't, right? And if that's how I'm reacting to that news, and that to me was the kicker, not, everything else, it's like, okay, I can take care of it. We'll figure it out. But when it came to that, okay, now I've got to be home with, 3 little ones. How do I do that? That's what hurt me. And I realized then, okay, obviously this is not as fair as I thought it was. And, I think even as women, we don't even know how unfair it is to even be, to not know where to start. Like, yes, we're making improvements. Yes, having things like daycare is at work. Yes, like having flex time, everything helps. But I don't even think we've got so much more that we need to do, and also just understand how it's impacting us.
I think you're making, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to chime in and say, for me, it was unlearning some of those roles. I would take it upon myself to be like, I can do it. I got it. I can handle it. And then it got to a point where I had to unlearn that I got it and be like, no, I don't got it. Please take over. Please hold the fort. I need to handle this situation. And it was, I would say the same thing with you, Seema, is like, I would assume that my husband and I have a fair, relationship, but there are times where there are unconscious biases and unconscious assumptions that like, oh, you handle this part and I handle this part. And when COVID hit, it was about having these very open, frank, like I cannot handle this. And we had to have like very candid conversations about how we kind of split those roles. And if it wasn't for that, I think I would have it would have been probably a more disastrous. And thankfully I have a very supportive, understanding husband that it was us going into this together as opposed to like, well, I got a meeting, I'll see you later. Right. So, and that's the thing, that there were times where, okay, we were both in a meeting, who prioritizes who first, right? Like if someone has to step up, and it's having these open dialogues, and it's creating clear guidelines on like what we can and cannot do. And I think as women, I think we need to unlearn some of the roles that we were maybe taught from childbirth, but like, that's what you're expected to do. And sometimes I think it's being honest with ourselves and saying like, okay, this is what I can handle and what I can't. And for the most part, I would say like, I think women can handle more, but that's just my, maybe my bias of like, I really think that we can handle way more than what men usually do, because I see it in the men in my life. But again, it doesn't mean that we can't ask for what we think is fair and what is needed at the time. And so for my learning was about speaking up for myself when needed.
Those are great. And I love the term unlearning. Unlearning those roles and that unconscious bias that we have as women, right? Where we still see gender roles. And I know that frequently I have to be careful when I'm hiring, when I'm meeting with people, and recognizing that no, this person isn't a B word. They're ambitious, and that's a freaking awesome thing. And can we all be more ambitious and be out there and putting ourselves forward and learning from our colleague, learning from each other, and supporting our community. Jen, did you want to add?
I just really like the whole concept of unlearning as well.
That's great. And there's a really interesting comment that's come up in the chat about a superior male actually asking someone to terminate a pregnancy because it would be better for their career. Sadly, that is not the first time I have heard a story like that. It happened in an academic environment that I worked in when I was a graduate student, where one of my colleagues was asked to terminate a pregnancy because it would be better for their career. And that is shocking, appalling, and devastating. And I pray that we are moving beyond a world where that is even something that could ever be discussed. And I'm just so happy that we're having these open, candid conversations. Terrifying, but open, which is great. One of the questions I'd love to put out is each of you are leaders of your organization, and each of you have been at the table looking for funding, looking for opportunities to engage pitching. How have you approached this as a woman? Have you approached it differently? The Be Bob, I love that approach. Is there something there that you have to do to manage your own expectations? How do you approach it? And I'm again throwing it, I'd like each of you to answer that one. Like, what's your approach as a woman leader coming to the table?
Yeah, maybe, I mean, I could chime in.
You guys are all so polite. I'm going to have to start calling your names. Okay.
We don't want to cut anybody off. I think it's just my thought process when approaching these type of things, like, should I apply to this grant? Should I apply for this funding? Should I apply for the, my thought is just do it. If you get a no, you get a no. But then you can just keep moving forward. And I've gotten a million no's for every yes that I push forward, but I wouldn't have gotten that yes if I didn't push forward. And there's so many times where I'm like, I'm not going to get this grant, I'm not going to get this funding, or we're not going to get this client, or there's no way they're going to list us in the store. But it's like, well, why not? Did we try? If they say no, they say no. If they like, have you asked? Like, have you tried? So I think my response to that is like, is just put myself out there. It's I don't say no to opportunities. I just, if they say no to me, then it's a no. But it doesn't stop me from looking at like, okay, here's my goal and I'm on my way there. And so if I can happen to have like extra bonus points, or maybe like like extra, like with the video games, how you have like extra points to get you to go faster. If I can get those points to go faster, why not? But if not, I'm still pursuing that goal. It's not going to stop me from aiming towards that goal. So I think sometimes we feel like, oh, well, I didn't make it in the pitch. There's so many times that I've applied for things that I haven't gotten as a company, and then the next year I'd be like, I'm trying again. I'm not who I am where I was last year, and I'm in a different position now, and I can push myself out there. And I would say most of the time, the second or third time around of applying for the same thing, I would get it. And it's a reminder that you might get a no, but the no is a reminder, and it's a lesson to help you improve. Even from like a supplier, I remember like trying to access a particular like distributor that I wanted to work with, and they gave me they were like, no, you're not ready. And this was very early in the start of Sitti. And I remember like, I shed a few tears and was like, why am I doing this? This is so exhausting. Everybody's saying no. And I remember my husband looking at me and he's like, they're telling you what's wrong. Now go fix it. And I was like, yeah, okay, got it. And then 6 months down the line, we improved all of the gaps that we were having, reapplied to kind of get featured. And then they were like, okay, now you're ready. We want to list you. So these are things. So sometimes we get no's, but take those no's and take the feedback to improve yourself to kind of continue to move forward. So my thing as a leader is you're going to get no's, but it doesn't define you and the goal that you're aiming to do, you're aiming to achieve.
It's excellent. Thank you for that. And the no's, and exactly what you're saying, those no's, there's a reason the no's are coming. Having been working with entrepreneurs for years, if we're sharing feedback, it's the entrepreneurs that can actually listen to that and be learn and grow, are the ones that we want to work with, right? The ones that are hearing the feedback, taking it and making their companies better are the ones that will get to this level, because it's hearing the no's. There's a reason for the no, and it's not always what you think it is, right? It's adjusting and doing a pivot. Used to have a different meaning, but pivot as an entrepreneur, it's important to do and understand and listen to that feedback. So that's great. Seema or Jen?
I cannot remember the exact question, but I'm like listening and I have so many things to add. Yeah, like tons of no's, but I think my prior career, because I was in sales, no always just means not right now. And like you just said, listening to that and getting the feedback is so critical. Like I can tell you, we applied for Sephora's accelerator program in 2018. They told Cheekbone Beauty no. I was like crying in the fetal position, like this is over. Like they said no. And then, you gather yourself together and you realize, no, they're saying no. And then, but what did they tell me? Well, they told me never ever will a private white label brand sit on their shelves, because that's not innovative enough. It's not, what's your differentiating factor? Like, you cannot come to the market with somebody else's product and think you're going to be successful. And that is the actual truth. So we left that meeting, and that's when I realized, okay, now I got to go get capital. And figure out how I'm going to make this sustainable beauty brand that I envisioned from the beginning. So I have the proof of concept. People like this, the brand, the idea. I had to take it to the next level, which is that huge risk of asking someone for money to pay for that. But just, realize that had to happen. And then even now, understanding why we're not ready for certain things, it's because we need to still be making improvements in different areas. And so it's constantly, you're going to hear no, or it's, which is not right now. And what are you going to do to fix it? And really listening, like really diving into it. Cause just a recent example, it took me like 2 meetings and an email to pull what was the real problem from something that's happening with us in Sephora USA right now, right? Like I wasn't seeing it because I wasn't pulling it apart or stopping and thinking about it, and not, you're hearing the no, but you're not seeing the why. And then when that comes clear, you're like, oh, okay, this is what I have to do to go fix this part of our brand right now. So I think that's exciting. As soon as you figure out what you can do to change to get better, you're like, let's get on this. And it always is going to cost a crap load of money. So just get used to that, because that's entrepreneurship. Everything's going to cost you a couple $100,000. And now, and then you as long as you're working with the right investment partners, your business is still growing and scaling, all of those things will happen. But I love that part. That to me is so exciting.
Seema, did you want to add anything?
I think anyone who's been an entrepreneur or knows entrepreneurs knows that, no is a very common word, and get used to it, right? Learn to deal with rejection and you take the learning from it and keep going. And that's, you need to have that resilience, and you'll definitely build it, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs who, who don't stick with their business, it's because of that, that anxiety that you build up, that, it is difficult to keep moving on. And I think in regards to being a woman entrepreneur, I try to flip it around. Like if I find myself in scenarios where I'm the only woman, or the only, woman of, color, especially a minority, I try to flip it around and try to, I'm like, okay, if I got this far, so you can imagine how ambitious I am that I got here amongst all of you, and try to make that shine. So, and I any chance that's come up, using, the fact that I have children as a negative, I try to flip it around and, make it a positive and saying, well, that's one of the reasons why I'm here, right? I use, I see them as my motivation. So that's what got me here. And I have that constant motivation, which maybe a lot of the men here do not. So, I think when you are an entrepreneur, you need to make it clear that you have, you're motivated, and there's so many things that motivate you. And I think, I see, yes, it's definitely challenging running a business and having, little people around you. But I think at the same time, it teaches you to be so adaptable, and it teaches you to, and I see that as, that's why women are, as Noora said, we can do a lot more than men can, because we've been in situations where we've had to. And I think I see that as a strength, and I always try to communicate that as a strength.
That's great. And there's a comment here from the UK. We have someone watching from the UK who's sharing the issues are the same across the pond. So it's really nice to see everyone sharing their stories, because this is a worldwide phenomenon, and we know in more developing countries how much greater this gap is, right? So knowing what you guys are doing to help address that and with our Indigenous communities is just wonderful. So many questions I want to ask, but I know we only have so much time. One of the questions that I'd love to address is, how are we engaging our allies? And I know this can be in a diversity angle, but I think men in particular for this conversation, how can we engage men to be at the table and see us at the table? And I'm wondering how you've done that in your careers. And I know I'm sort of throwing it out there, but what are the ways that we can engage? And I know we have a great team member in our group that's really pulling together the men in our team to talk about how can we be allies? How can we support and better understand what women are doing to help change the narrative? So Jen, do you want to give that a go?
Hopefully I can add. So I think it starts at home. A mother of a son who's going to be 20 this year, and having an incredible husband partner. And I think that it really has to start there, and just seeing then from our family's perspective is just how supportive my partner is, and not only in everything that I've done with Cheekbone, but with our family. Like, it is truly one of those amazing situations where you have the support in order to do this, because it's really hard. Like, this is so hard. I know there's lots of women here, but I feel like building a business, raising children is super hard too. And I think that's what makes us great at building businesses, because this is, it is like that for me. This is a third child, but then having a partner at home who's definitely there picking up and supporting me when I need to, and doing all the things without ever being asked, is just so helpful. And then he also leads the globally for his company, the diversity, equity, inclusion. And so getting to hear back from him, like, not only does I don't cook, he makes all the meals at home, which is like, everybody needs one of those. But he does that for his career as well. So getting to listen, and just the kinds of conversations that we have around our dinner table, where our teenage children are hearing how things are supposed to be. And that's why for me, I think it starts at home. And as I see what his company has done, and how that is developed, I definitely take that example and realize, oh, with building Cheekbone, is even though we're just a startup, all of the things that we can layer into our business to ensure, again, that safe working environment for everyone.
I love that approach, the starting at home. I know COVID in particular has brought us around the dinner table again with so much going on. I have two teenage girls, and it was bringing them back to the table where we could be together and have frank and open discussions. And it felt like the dinner table is sort of that safe space. And I agree, the home is a great starting point. So Seema and Noora?
Yeah, I would say don't assume that your counterpart understands or knows. Like, we make assumptions that they should know that this is what I need and where I need support. And I again unlearned that like you need to ask for it when you need it. You need to have these conversations because they've gone through their own experiences of what they understand is, you know, like I look at my husband and how he grew up and his you know, like I guess the way his family grew up and their understanding of how a woman contributes and so we try to see that from that perspective. And recently actually we did I actually ordered this thing from Shopify they have for kids. It's called Shopify for Kids that help kids become entrepreneurs. So my kids were like, Mom, I want to start my own company because I want to be my own boss like you know, because dad's an employee and you're the boss. So I want to be a boss like you. And I was like, it just sounded so bad. And I was like, well, your dad still does really important work. Like, he's like, yeah, but I want this. I want to start my own company. And so we ordered them these like Shopify for Kids, and they were sitting there like filling out their business idea and what they wanted to do. And it was just so nice to be like, you know, walking them through the process. And then, you know, my son wants to be a YouTube, and it's really talking about like, oh, let's really guide you and help you and provide you with those roles. And I think it's having these open conversations. It's not making assumptions that they should know, and a lot of the times they don't know. Like sometimes they don't know they're not being like they're having an inclusive mindset. They don't know that they're not contributing enough. And I think it's speaking up and saying you need to have a role, and it's not enough for us to assume that they'll just step in and you know. But yeah, I do need a guy that cooks in the house. That would be really helpful though.
Me too.
And
I
Seema,
think
you have the perfect apron for them, Seema.
Yes.
So.
and it's funny because so many at least celebrity chefs are men. So go figure, right? I don't know how that exactly happens, but um it I think it's yeah, you have to when it comes to, you know, getting, you know, men on board, I think a lot of it too is just making them aware of, you know, stereotypes that they might have. But I think it comes down to women as well. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of you still have um, women, and I think I'm for sure I've done it myself too, where you see, you know, a father who's like, I think when Jen mentioned, oh, that her husband does most of the cooking, we were like, oh, like look at him, like, you know, like we put him up on a pedestal, right? It's like, why do we do that? Like, why would we do that, right? When we see a father bringing their kids to school over there, you know, the woman will be like, oh, look at him, he's such a good father. I'm like, I don't get that. I don't get, look at her bringing her kids to school, what a good mother. So we do it to ourselves too, right? And I think we have to first stop doing it to ourselves and then try to also, you know, get the men on board, right? Like, depending on, like, I think similar to Noora, my husband, you know, comes from a very traditional family. So mindset was, okay, the you know, for at least for his family, that the woman supports the man, right? Yeah, she can work, but her work is secondary to his work. So right from day one, I had to tell my husband, well, if that's what you want, you married the wrong woman. Like this is, you know, this is not happening in our household. So please, if that's how you think, you have to adjust your thinking, because that's not the case here. And nor do I ever want that to be the case, you know, or my children to even think that's the case, right? My sons and my daughter, I don't want them to even think that that's an option here. So that has to start with our thinking and how we act towards each other and the roles that we play, and, you know, our you know, whether it's equitable and who's doing what, right? Making sure it's as fair as can be.
That's great. Thank you. I'm trying to debate between questions. We have about 6 minutes here. So I think this is the question I'm going to end with. And I think it's valuable because it sort of ties into the other question, sort of advice you'd give to others. But I think, what is the advice you'd give to your 25-year-old self, recognizing you all look 25, but I know you're not. So what advice would you give to yourself looking back and understanding what you have today, given the hindsight that you have? And I'll start with Jen, if you want to start with that one.
This is always so hard because I've made so many mistakes. There's just so much advice. And I think the one thing that I have figured out and done pretty good job at is because I always say I have no great skills. I don't feel like I'm super good at anything. That's why I'm like, anyone, if you have an idea and you're super passionate about it, you can make this happen, because if I could do that, then anyone can. But I was consistent. Like, that is why this has been successful, is when that gave birth to the ideas. Ever since that literal dream pop out of the bed in the middle of the night, every day since then, I did something to work on Cheekbone Beauty to move it to the next thing, including all of those things that made me super uncomfortable. I hands down believe in networking, showing up. I met my mentor and an amazing ally, and who happens to be an older white dude, and he out from the beginning was like, do you really want me to help you with this? And I'm like, you founded Bite Beauty, yes, of course I want you to help me with this. I'm not dumb either. I'll be like, you know a lot more than I do right now. So, and when I met Doug, I was just so grateful, because that's, you know, just what true allyship looks like. So, but I would have never met him unless I was consistent and showed up at those networking events that someone knew him that introduced us. And so those would be my like two pieces of advice for my younger self.
Love it. Thank you. Seema?
Oh goodness. I think I would tell myself to, forget, don't look at the past, don't look, like, just focus on moving forward and stop thinking about why you can't do something. And just every day, like Jen said, it's about being consistent, right? And I think it's just taking a little step every time, even how, no matter how tiny it is, right? Then you're at least moving in that direction, right? And everyone's going to move at their own pace, whatever is comfortable for them, whatever they're capable of. But if you just keep taking a little step, it at the end you'll look back and you've covered a distance, right? So I think it's just comes down to that. It's no one's going to help you, right? It has to come from you, and you have to keep taking little steps. And when people see that you are, moving forward and moving, they want to help you. People want to help you. The right people will show up, and I believe in that. I believe that when you hit a barrier, the right person or the right things will kind of happen in place if you keep putting yourself out there. I do believe that.
I love that. And I think what we've seen in the entrepreneur community is no matter what level of success, people want to give back. They want to come back because they've been through that journey. And if you can tap into that network and engage mentors that can support you through that path, they're key to your success. So I love all of these stories. And Noora.
Yeah, and just to chime in with, both Jen and Seema, one is don't wait for someone to do it for you. No one's going to do it for you. I mean, if you're not going to do it, it's just going to sit there as a vision or a dream, and you just have to take that next step. And the second would be similar to what Seema's saying of sometimes you don't have the right resources, and don't be afraid to ask those around you. Like when we first started, we had nothing. And I remember knocking, and this was in Jordan, I was knocking on the doors of businesses saying, can you donate this? Can you give this? Can you, just to kind of build our center to start? Like we needed a workshop. And I was like, I don't have $100,000 to build this. There's no way I'm going to make it work. And it was literally me knocking on doors of businesses to help give what they can. And it wasn't even monetary. It was like, oh, I'll build you a kitchen, I'll give you a table, I'll give you a mixture. Like it was like random things that businesses were willing to give up in support of that journey. And people, I remember saying, no one's going to hand you things. And I'm like, did you ask? Did they say no? So it's always saying, just put yourself out there, ask, don't underestimate the generosity of those around you. I always say that people want opportunities to give, they just don't know how. And we have to create those opportunities through our asks. And it could be in their capacity, their way. And we may envision it differently, but we have to let them know that the opportunity is available to give. And that's where they can come in and be creative and an opportunity to do so. So go out and ask for it.
Well, this is amazing. I want to thank each and every one of you. It is 11:29, so we will wrap up the event. So I thank you to FedDev for being a great partner in this, and Franca for being here today. I thank you to each of our speakers, Jen, Noora, Seema, amazing. It's so wonderful to be here. I want to sit and have a big meal with all of you, and I would enjoy a glass of wine and whoever wanted to, but thank you for being here. I love these conversations. Mona, shout out to Mona, helping us co-host today and arranging and coordinating all of the activity to get us here for this event. So thank you, Mona, and the entire economic development team who has been supporting this. And finally, thank you to all of you whose faces I can't see, but I've loved seeing the chat as we've gone through this. And again, to those who will see this as a recording, moving forward, thank you. Each of you are helping us on our journey to close this gender gap, create a future that is truly sustainable for generations of women to come. And I love changing the narrative. I'm going to use Helen's comment. It's no longer hashtag go be Bob, it's hashtag be Jen, be Noora, and be Seema. We want to change that narrative. So thank you all for being here today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.